world where achievements and accolades motivate us to do more and be more, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there is more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old, push your way through, and claim the deeper life that's calling you.
That's where we excel.
We're your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslak.
And this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Sit back and relax as we share the shortcuts we've uncovered to help you make shift happen.
Hi, welcome to the Soulful Leader Podcast. This is Stephanie, and I'm here with Maren. And we have been contemplating over the last week a very interesting saying called being called to the show. And I didn't ever hear that that language before, and I didn't know what it meant. And what I'm understanding that it means is when a great athlete is called to the major leagues or, a higher level of athletics. And I was reflecting on it personally, of not just with athletics, but with other areas in our lives. Like sometimes we're called up to the next level of our growth. And whether that's in a relationship or in business or in health or different things. And
like maybe a promotion.
Exactly.
Or starting your own business.
Starting your own business, or you win something. It could be like a great gift that you've been given by somebody and you weren't really, expecting it or something like that. And what happens, the story goes like this, that this young man was called to the show. And he fit basically the perfect physiological, checkbox to be able to go to the NBA. And he is recruited to the NBA right out of high school, but hasn't got the inner structures, the inner skill set or the mindset or the emotional, like all these different attributes that are needed in order to really be at that level. And those are all the interior things that nobody ever sees, right? And what had happened is after 3 years of being in the NBA, which he never got to basically play, he was then let go. And I thought to myself, I'm like, oh my God, I could just, I could put myself in his shoes. And well, not really, because his shoes would be much bigger than mine. But, I put myself in his shoes and I realized that where have I been given an opportunity or a gift and then lost it? Like, when they say, you don't know what you've got till it's gone, right? I've lost it and then realized that was actually amazing. And now I have to work even that much harder to get back to there.
So I guess some of the ways what I'm thinking about right now is, was it a gift though? Because if he was not ready for it and not prepared, then is it truly a gift? Or, and we all experience this in our lives where we're put in a situation, and in some ways, yes, it's a gift because it pushes us to grow. And in some ways it's hurtful because I can imagine, being 3 years, being called up because I have all the physical attributes and nobody is taken the time to look at, well, do I have all of the other attributes that you're just I'm just being looked at from the outside.
Oh, and isn't that true how we look at everything so much in our culture by the outside?
Everything is
judging it
by the outside and then basically dismissed because I wasn't good enough. You're not good enough. We're going to let you go. But you guys never even looked at who I was as the whole being. And you've judged me and dismissed me based on one sliver, my physical attributes. Like, I think about how horrific that feels. Just even hearing it feels horrific inside of me. Mainly because I've experienced that. I know what that's like to feel like that, to feel judge, jury, and executioner, bam, because I didn't live up to some vision that you had of me, whoever the you is. And you called me to the show before I was ready, or based on something that had nothing to do with who I was. So is it a gift?
Yeah, I think no. I think, well, yes and no. I'm like,
Yes and no, right?
yes and no, right? It's like I've had situations where that's happened to me in my own life, and it's taken me another 30 years of going inside. It's like the deep rotor rooting of the inner world, because what it looked good on the outer
Yeah.
was empty on the internal. And losing it, losing the status or the identity or the gift or whatever, the relationship, whatever it was on the outer side. And once it was gone, then I realized I had nothing to stand on. There was nothing internally for me to fall back to rest into. And it's taken me another 30 years to work with those internal scaffolding or those internal structures inside myself. I often liken it to the house. I was just having a conversation with someone today about my home, and there, I've had my home for 20 years, and I've done a lot of renovations. It's cost a lot of money and a lot of time, a lot of effort and a lot of insight, a lot of work. Trust me, a lot of work. And people say, well, is it worth it? Putting lipstick on a pig is often what I keep hearing, like, why put lipstick on a pig? And I'm like, it's so interesting when we so quick to judge on the external, and we don't take care of the internal. So in my home, I've upgraded the electrical because my house is over 100 years old. So it had knob and tube. Well, 100 years old, didn't even have electrical. So when it was built, so it's like, it's been upgraded, whether it's the plumbing, whether it's the insulation, all these things that nobody ever sees the benefit of. No one, but I do, because now I can rest assured and go to bed at night and know that my electrical is going to be healthy. I've got insulation, so I know that my heating bills are going to go down. Like, there's all these other little things that I know, but no one else knows. And then all of a sudden, now you start to see it on the outer. Meaning, if the bones of the home aren't really solid, well, you're going to see the wear and tear on the external. It's the same as like in our own physical health. I say this over and over again. It's like, we are so quick to adjust the physical, to look at the physical. And that doesn't say that that's not important. It sure is important. But if we're not looking at the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual underpinnings of something, when you take a hit, whether it's a fall or an accident, whatever it might be, or just an emotional hit of someone else doesn't like you, or you have a breakup or a job loss or something, when we take an emotional hit, mental, spiritual hit, it is going to affect our physical, because all of those plays out in it. So if we can build those internal structures with love and kindness and gentleness, and really have a daily practice or a ritual of some sort that is always nurturing that, then we bounce a little bit more. It doesn't quite shatter us. And yet the shattering, like, we're going back to being called to the show, I can't imagine what that young man must have felt getting called up to the NBA and then saying, oh, thanks very much. Thanks for coming out, but you didn't make the team. Off you go, kind of thing. Here's your shirt, see you later. And, at a very young age, going, okay, what did I do? Like, that's where I would have
What did I
gone.
do
What did I do
wrong?
wrong? Right? What did I
Yeah.
do wrong? How could I be better? And it's like, you just didn't have the internal structures to be
Well,
able to.
somebody put you on a pedestal before you could develop at that. So there isn't the shame that you didn't have it, like as
Right.
if it was something you should have had. If anything, it's shame on the people that did that to him. And, not even going there. It's
Yeah. It's just
so
realizing.
right. Each of us has our own journey that we're on. So that young man's journey will be, part of it will be, okay, who do I need to become to own that, whatever just happened to me? And that's actually each of our journeys, right? So if I get promoted into a job that I don't yet have the skills for, external, or more importantly, because we don't think of that, we oftentimes think of the external skills, like, oh, I need to learn Microsoft DOS, or, whatever it is. I know I'm showing my age there, right? But we recognize the outer skills that we need to learn.
Right.
The inner skills, we're not.
Sometimes those are we're not trained to look at them. We're not trained to
No, and
find them.
that's what you're talking about, like with the house. It's like nobody sees that. Nobody knows it but you. And yet it's everything, because
Wow.
without a good electrical and a good plumbing system, and like everything starts to fall apart. And now you're spending all of your time, energy, effort, and money just maintaining the basics. And no wonder people say, oh, you're putting lipstick on a pig. Guess what? That's what we're doing to ourselves
All the time.
inside, because we're running around putting out electrical fires and plumbing problems and all of the internal stuff, because no one's taught us how do we maintain that and not feel like we're putting lipstick on a pig.
Well, and how do we develop it? How do we learn to love ourselves? How do we
Yeah.
learn to expand our capacity to receive new information and to, I mean, I hear this all the time about the digital, natives of this world now who can just basically do anything with apps and digital and stuff like that. And certain levels of generation are going, I don't even want to go there. It just stresses me out. And it's like, well, what happened? How do we keep developing? And I'm not talking about the skill development of it. I'm talking about how are we with ourselves through it?
Right.
That we start to close down and tighten up and fear the unknown, or push away help and support and love, or we tell ourselves that we're helpless and hopeless. It's those structures that are more important than the skills will come, or you'll find somebody who can totally help you. But if you do not have that internal love and care and attention and space capacity, you will push away things. You will sabotage the very things that are trying to help you, to lift you up, and to help it broaden and expand your life and awareness.
Yeah. I think about the people who are almost born into greatness. And I don't say that lightly. What I mean by that is the people who we do put them on pedestals, and they are looked at like we almost idolize them. And yet their insides are tearing them apart. And bless his heart, I'm going to bring up Matthew Perry, because he just passed away and he was working really hard on that internal piece. And from his writings, it really sounded like he felt like he was alone in that. And I think we so related to him on Friends, and he entertained us, and he was so masterful, and yet there was a piece of him that couldn't even own it. That was like he didn't feel worthy. And for all that we can relate to with him in his acting, I think we can relate even more to that piece of it, where in our daily lives, for all that we put on for the outer world, we still don't feel worthy, and we don't know why we're here or what we're called to do. And I think that those are the inner structures that we're talking about, that regardless of what the outer looks like, what's going on the inside.
Yeah, and this is why mental illness is such an epidemic right now, is that for centuries, we've just been looking at the physical, and yet it's the mental and emotional that plays out on our physical.
Yeah.
So really, we've taken pretty good care of the physical. We really have all the answers to be able to handle the physical now. And
And
now
just time out, because when we say the physical, I'm not just talking about the physical body. I mean,
oh
like,
God,
we're looking at the fact that, like, people who look like they've got it all together on the physical level, like they've got the money, they've got the accolades, they've got the, they've made it, like checked all the boxes.
but they're
They're in the show.
lonely.
They've
But they're
made it to the show.
lonely. They're empty. They're suffering internally. We
Right.
don't know what goes on internally, and it is hidden. It's in the darkness. And I
Yes.
think even in ourselves, we're so much like, I don't want to go in. I don't want to look at that. I don't want to bring that up. And we're so conditioned to look at the light, to look at the sunshine, to look at where the weather is great. And let's just go there and let's just hang out. There was an interesting story I heard the other day about, and we've actually shared this about the good wolf and the bad wolf, and the Native American basically says, to his to the grandson, tells a story about the good wolf and the bad wolf, and the little grandson says, well, which wolf is going to live? And we make a judgment about right, wrong, good, bad, and instead of saying, and the story goes, well, it's the one you feed, the one you give the attention to. And that, yes, that is definitely a practice. If we keep defaulting into the negative, we keep defaulting back into the trauma and the drama, kind of getting our own internal addiction hit from our internal chemicals. Sure, you don't want to keep giving attention to that which is no longer working. And this is a both and with this. I said, I've come to a place in our society where it's not about ignoring that which isn't working anymore. It's also about leaning in and finding a place where you can understand the person who is struggling and going, tell me what's going on. What are you believing, or what is happening internally? Whether
Not
they're a
to fix
bully,
it.
not to fix it, but to understand it.
Right. To
It's
listen.
different. It's still, yeah. And to come closer to that, it's like, if you look at bullies, and you see this a lot in the school system, we have to, end bullying or stamp out bullying. And I'm like, well, that's bullying the bully, isn't it? It's like, what do we understand why the bully is even bullying? Like, is there a need? Is there something that's happening? And that takes incredible amount of compassion. And we cannot, there's an old spiritual saying that says, you cannot pray for peace if you have not looked at getting peace inside yourself. If you have not worked within yourself, it's really hard to offer something that you have not cultivated within yourself. Well, that is the same with, the good wolf, bad wolf, or the bullying. It's like, if we haven't looked at the darkness inside ourselves with love and compassion and gentleness and kindness, you're not going to look at it in someone else with the same. We're going to try to burn, cut, poison, and annihilate, which is where we tend to always default in our world, is like just blow it up, like get rid of it, whether it's medical, whether it's war, whether it's whatever it is. We tend to take a very much reactive response to it rather than being with the uncomfortability and going, that Maren, she's having a hard time. I wonder, she's really getting prickly. I wonder what's really going underneath it. We take it personally instead of saying, because I care about this person, I'm going to hold space for them and just lean in and say, what's happening? What's going on internally? Because a lot of times we don't know how to go in. We're so on the hot messness that we don't know how to drop in. And this is why we collectively really do need communities. We really need each other. It isn't about look, if we could have got out of a book or out of a movie or out of something online, we would have already. We have all the information we need. This is why we need to come into relationship, and why co-creating together is what's going to have to happen for us to move to a whole new paradigm.
Yeah. And when I think about that, I go back to kind of what we started with, of instead of judging like the being called to the show, when we look at ourselves, and instead of judging it as I'm ready, I'm not ready, what's the conversation that needs to happen on an internal level of, yeah, there may be skills outwardly that I need to develop, and also what am I being called to inwardly to develop more compassion, more understanding, more presence, the ability to listen at a deeper level. There's so many, I think that we call them soft skills, and they're so important. The hard skills, yeah, they're important. And the soft skills are like the key. They're that internal, like you said, the stuff that's behind what you see in your house. Those are the things that are behind what we see on the outer. And they change our experience of our own lives, so that I get to be in my life and celebrating and exciting and loving my life, instead of in that constant doubt and shame and fear that I think a lot of people live in, that our society encourages us to live in, with all the ads of you should be this and
Oh,
you should be that, and right?
the world is set up to distract us from looking
Yeah.
any further underneath the surface. Like, let's just look at the topical level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my wish for all of you is that you get called to the show so that you have a chance to stop and look around and say, whoa, 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 wait a minute. What needs to happen in here for me to
And
really own that?
and I want to say, not, getting called to the show and then having, losing something that you didn't even know was great until it's gone can also be a great journey. I could say the 30 years of being called to the show and then losing it has actually helped me go underneath the surface. And now, standing in the future of that 30-year journey, during the journey wasn't always so fun, but getting through 30 years of it and looking back going, wow, I've really changed. I've really evolved. It has
Mm.
been a thread that has helped me see a bigger picture. And if I hadn't had that, I often say, if you hadn't had the difficulty or the challenge or the thing in your life, you may not have ever dug underneath the surface. And, I've met many people who have never dug underneath the surface, and their lives, when they come to me, their lives are so empty. And there's even more. The sooner you can dig and go underneath the surface, the more joy, the more, that's where treasure is, right? The more treasure you're going to find, the more joy, everything. The longer you wait, the harder, or at least it's not true. It's not harder to go in there. It's just that your mind thinks it's harder. And so the mind becomes more
Rigid.
rigid. Yeah, more rigid. And the emotions are more attached to who you think you are.
It's like
And the
you're in a
ego.
groove, right? The
Yeah.
deeper the groove goes in, for those of you who are old enough to remember records,
Right.
right? You get
You get
stuck in a
stuck.
groove, right? And it's harder to get out, or at least the impression is that it is harder to
And
get out.
what is the difference between a groove and a grave? 6 feet. Right. So if you keep digging out that groove,
Yeah.
you're going to dig yourself a grave, and then you're the Walking Dead. And I think, there's parts of myself that are still the Walking Dead. And I know that when I hit up against an uncomfortability or difficult, I know this is an opportunity to go in and get the buried treasure. And this is when, not to shame yourself or to beat yourself up wrong, but say, okay, now this is time to ask for help. This is time to actually come into a relationship with a community that is growing and evolving. And it's time to learn some skills, and the soft skills and the internal.
Yeah. As we're headed towards the culmination of the year, I think a lot of people do take this time of year to stop and reflect. So as you're doing that, check in. We would love to hear from you as far as what are some of the things that you're looking at for this coming year on an internal level, of things that the skills that you want to develop, so that when you are called to the show, whatever that show may be for you, that you feel a little more prepared on the internal inside here. So we'd love to hear from you. Remember, you can find us at the Soulful Leader on both Facebook and LinkedIn, and now on YouTube. And for anybody that is interested, remember that, or maybe you don't know yet, that we have all next year, we're going to be working with a small group of people. And if you would like to be one of those people in our community, reach out to us. You can find more information at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com, or on our new website. It's TSLP.life, and it stands for the Soulful Leader Project, TSLP, and it's .life. So we'll see you all next week on the Soulful Leader Podcast.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader Podcast with your host, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website, at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.